Period. Senator Platt.
Thank you, Speaker. My question is for the government leader in the Senate. Senator Gold, the withdrawal of Teck's proposed Frontier mine in northeastern Ontario is a devastating blow, not just for that province, but indeed for our entire country. Thousands of good, well-paying jobs and billions of dollars in private sector investment are gone. In a public letter, Teck's president, Don Lindsay, stated, and I quote, "Frontier has unprecedented support from Indigenous communities and was deemed to be in the public interest by a joint federal-provincial review panel following weeks of public hearings and a lengthy regulatory process. Despite all of this, Mr. Lindsay said, and I again quote, there is no constructive path forward for the project." Leader, Teck had reached agreement with all 14 Indigenous communities in the project area. The project was thoroughly reviewed and was approved by a scientific panel. If this project cannot be built in our country, what can?
Senator Gold.
Thank you very much for the question, Senator. As all senators know, the decision by Teck was a business decision, and the Government of Canada respects that. With regard to the letter that the Honourable Senator quotes, Mr. Lindsay's letter to Minister Wilkinson also underlines, and I'm quoting, that investors and customers are increasingly looking for jurisdictions to have a framework in place that reconciles resource development and climate change in order to produce the cleanest possible products. It is the position of this government that it is indeed possible and necessary to work collaboratively so that our resources can continue to be developed in a sustainable way and one that contributes to the world's transition to a lower carbon future. That is the aspiration that the CEO of Teck Resources expressed in his letter, and that's the objective that lies behind this government's policies. Mr. Lindsay's letter concludes by saying, and I quote, "The promise of Canada's potential will not be realized until governments can reach agreement around how climate policy considerations will be addressed in the context of future reasonable energy sector developments. The federal government, I am advised, is firmly committed to working with premiers, Indigenous communities, and the resource sector so that Canada can be a world leader in developing a sustainable, climate-smart resource sector while supporting our objectives of transitioning to a less and lower carbon future."
Senator Platt.
Let me just ask if the leader would be agreeable to tabling that letter later on. But nowhere in that statement did I hear an answer to the question, what can? Let me ask it this way. We have a Prime Minister who has spoken both at home and overseas of the need to phase out oil sands. We have a government which brought in Bill C-48, Bill C-69, which will ensure that no major energy projects are built.
Shame.
We have a government that gave taxpayers dollars to an environmental group to advocate against Trans Mountain. We have a government that sends millions of Canadian taxpayers' dollars to help build pipelines in Asia, while thousands of middle-class jobs and billions in private sector investment in our own country has evaporated.
Shame.
The list goes on and on. Senator Gold, where does this end? Please don't read a letter to me. Where does this end? Can your government say with certainty that Coastal GasLink will be built? What can it say that about Trans Mountain expansion? And what projects will be cancelled next?
Senator Gold.
I think the government's position on Trans Mountain has been fairly clear. It purchased a pipeline, notwithstanding the political cost that everyone understands that it paid. With regard to the national gas pipeline in BC, my understanding is the Premier of British Columbia has asked the company to temporarily delay construction so that further consultations with the Indigenous communities can take place. Honourable Senator, I know that there are many people who want to ask questions, so I will try to answer the rest of your question briefly. The letter to which you referred was written to the Minister by Tech, and I believe it's covered with a press release and it's available to anyone publicly. And with regard to the rest of your question, the Government of Canada does not accept your characterization of Bill C-69 or the other measures, and I will stop at that.